What's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today, doing a what's next on Gary Russell Jr., the former longtime WBC champion who just recently lost his title to Mark Magsayo on Saturday, January 22nd by a 12-round majority decision. We're going to discuss that, and we're going to talk about what possibly is coming up in the future for him. So, it was a tough loss for Gary Russell. It was only his second loss of his career. He hadn't lost since 2014 when Vasily Lomachenko cleanly outboxed him for 12 rounds. And, he took on Magsayo, who is just an undefeated power puncher, and it was coming off of a 2-year layoff. People were wondering what kind of Gary Russell were we going to see. Was he going to be the same old Gary Russell that completely outboxes and outsmarts his opponents? Or was it going to be, a rusty version, and was he going to be the same? Is he old now? That a lot of questions were looming about Gary Russell and how good he was. So, heading into the fight with Magsayo, he had mentioned earlier in the week that he had sustained an injury, but he would talk about it afterwards. So to me, that was a pre-built excuse for if he loses the fight. And then when the fight happened, Russell didn't do bad. It just early on, Magsayo put the pressure on and stole the early rounds by putting the pressure on, landing shots, but just pressuring Russell. Once Russell figured out what Magsayo was going to do, he started throwing, counter shots that were scoring, but they were one at a time because he wasn't throwing his right hand because of his supposed injury. So, that kind of all made sense. And Russell, some of the rounds were close because it was really one punch at a time. I thought he was definitely in the fight, and he had won some rounds, though, based on his counter punching. But the one punch at a time thing kept all the rounds close. So some of those rounds that were swing rounds, might have went to Magsayo, and obviously they did, because by the end of the fight, the judges came back with a majority decision for Magsayo as he pulled out the upset and became the WBC champion. So Russell, after the fight, confirmed that he had injured his arm, like a tendon or something, and that, he was going to require surgery, but he'd be back. And, my thing is this, is that's all good and well, and I believe it. I believe he probably was injured. That's why he wasn't throwing his right hand. I mean, that makes sense to me. Russell, not a guy that likes to lose, but when you give everybody a reason for if you do lose in advance by saying I got an injury, but I'll discuss it after, to me that makes it look like you're making excuses for why you lost. Even if it's true, that doesn't matter. Wait until after the fight. And then, to be honest, I've said this before, go have your surgery. Once you have your surgery, then you can let people know, hey, I had an injured shoulder, it's been bothering me for a while, and I went and got surgery on it. That way people can be like, oh, okay, he didn't make excuses before the fight, he didn't make excuses of the fight. And actually, to me, it shows balls that you went in there and you fought a guy hurt, and it totally makes people look at it and go, hey, Gary Russell might have won if he wasn't injured. But when you start with the excuses ahead of a fight and then use it during the fight, which they did, they went over to the corner, asked the corner what was wrong, corner cited the injury, Russell confirmed the injury after the fight, like I said, my hat's off to Gary Russell. I don't think he's a guy that likes to lose. I know, but not in a crybaby way. I think he's more of a, gets pissed off when he loses, which that's why I'm fine with that. But to have a pre-built excuse to me is tacky, and it looks bad. And, whatever, that it is what it is now. But what Gary Russell's probably doing next is he's probably going to take some time off to get surgery. I hope he comes back for the end of the year, because truth be told, there's a lot of good options in the PBC now that fight at featherweight. And I'd love to see Gary Russell make one last run and throw his name back in the mix before he gets too old, because I really do think that it's legitimate that he probably would have beat Magsayo if he was fully healthy at 100%. But we get in the ring and we fight the way we fight, with what we got or what we don't got. Once you get in the ring, that's all irrelevant, and the winner is the winner. That's the truth. And when it comes to boxing, I'm not saying Magsayo's better, but that night he won the fight. So You know, Russell, he's not going to drop very much. What he's probably going to do next, there really aren't any options lined up right now. I would probably suspect that he comes back and takes a tune-up bout, but I could see him going in against a guy like Julio Ceja. You know, one of those second, third tier PBC featherweights that they got, a former champ, somebody along those lines. But Gary Russell, in my opinion, will be back. I just hope he's a more active Gary Russell once he does come back. But we'll see what happens. But that's what I got. That's my what's next on the former longtime WBC featherweight champion Gary Russell Jr. following his loss to Mark Magsayo. I hope you guys enjoyed this. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.